uh, an example that the Lord gives, and it's a good one. We want to take a lot of things away from it. I hear a lot of, April is the gauntlet in education. You got all the tests, got all the almost out of schools, got all the things, and so it's been a long year this week, and it's only Wednesday, so that's just, yeah, it's just part of it. So, but it's going to be just fine. So, we're almost there, kids. We're almost there. How many knows how many actual days of school there are? Okay, Miss Anna, first on the list. 15 and a half days of actual school. Anybody else got a different number? Which 14 and a half for Abby? Are y'all on? How many do you have? Forever left. Yeah, it seems like forever, doesn't it?
I'm gonna go forever.
You're gonna go.
I don't want to break that.
I got you. Gonna go forever. Mac probably has the fewest of anybody. He's well, Audrey's done. She finished up yesterday, so no count for college kids. They get out extra early. And then Anderson County, I think our last day with students is the 20th. I think that's right. I think it's a makeup day even. So, and graduation is the 16th for Anderson County High School. Is that right? 16th or 17th? Yeah, and 15th for Clinton High School. So, it will quickly be upon us. Well, I looked at the calendar a few weeks ago. There were not any more weeks of school that didn't have some sort of an interruption in it for some reason. So next week there's an election day in Anderson County. So Tuesday is no students there that day, and then the following week. We have had, for my entire tenure at Anderson County Career and Technical Center, we've always had a school-wide cookout at the end of the year. And so that happens the following week, which we're there all week, but that Friday is this cookout day, so it's a whole different day unto itself. And then the very following week, it's a Monday, students turn Chromebooks in, and Tuesday and Wednesday are final exams for half days, and Thursday's a makeup day, and teachers check out and go home. So when you put them in those terms, there's not a whole lot of time left. It gets busy. Well, let's do just a minute of reflection of where we've gone. I'm not going to go back very far, but it seems like we've been on this day a long time. Of the week of Christ's Passion, and so it appears to be Tuesday of that week. That's according to the man we're studying after. But there's been a lot of events take place on Tuesday. So I'll just give you a quick rundown of what all's taken place so far on that Tuesday morning. So they got up Tuesday morning and they were headed into Jerusalem, and they passed that fig tree that Jesus had talked to the night before. And what was the weird thing about that fig tree the next day? All dried up. Yep. And it was supposed to have fruit on it, and it didn't have fruit. And Jesus said, well, if you're not doing what you're supposed to do, then you'll no longer be. And then he makes his way towards the temple proper, and he is there for most of the day, and he's still there even in our storytelling right now. We'll read kind of the last little bit of time as he is in the temple that day, and he leaves the temple. We won't get much past that tonight, but so he gets to the temple, and they start asking him questions, and they said, what authority do you have to teach these things? And Jesus responds with, well, let me ask you a question. It says, was John the Baptist's baptism of God or of man? So he has that. He gives them several parables while he's there. There's a parable of two sons. Once, the father went to the son and said, hey, go work. And he said, nope, I ain't doing it. You can't make me. And then he comes back and says, I'm sorry, Dad, I will do what you asked me to do. And the second son, he went to him and says, I need you to go work. And the son said, absolutely, Father, no problem, with pleasure. And then he goes back to playing video games. Well, it doesn't say that, But it says that he pretty much said, well, sure, but he doesn't do anything about it. And he says, well, which one of those two guys was justified? And the Pharisees, well, the first one, he repented of what he was doing. And then another, a phrase or a story he interjects there, he quotes from Psalms 118 and talks about, the builders have rejected the chief cornerstone, or the chief cornerstone, and it's become the chief cornerstone. He's rejected the stone, it's become the chief cornerstone. And then the Pharisees are like, oh, you talking about us? He says, very good, you're catching on. He gives them the parable of a wedding banquet and says that, hey, go and tell everybody he says, go and invite the guests that I want to have. And so they go and they say, hey, he wants you to come. And everybody starts giving excuses. And comes back to the king and he says, everybody gave us an excuse. They got to go to their field. They got to go to their business. They got to do whatever. It says, they need to do what they want to do. Okay? Go invite others. So others come and it says they got the good and the bad. And they came and the wedding took place and there was one problem. One guy didn't have on the right garment. And Jesus said, well, in the parable, he says, you don't have the right garment. What are you doing here? And he says, well, I just thought I'd, figure it out my own way. He says, without the right thing, you're not one of us. And so he says that, without Christ's righteousness, we're not part of this wedding event. Then they raised questions, and so then they're going to start asking questions to try to trick him. And so they said, hey, should we pay taxes? No, I still have that question. No. But they said, should we pay taxes? Ben, what you got, buddy? I got you. Well, it sounds like Ben's question about taxes as well to me. So, but he says, so they said, should we pay taxes? And Jesus said, well, bring me a coin, right? I said, well, whose picture is on the coin? And they said, well, Caesar's. He said, well, render under Caesar that which is Caesar's, and render under God that which is God's. And they were like, remember, this is 3 different groups of people that come to him and ask questions. So the next group comes and ask about the resurrection, and they had questions about the resurrection, trying to trick him, and they used the example of, well, if a guy had, how many brothers? Do you all? I don't remember off the top of my head. 5 brothers, maybe, or 7 brothers? Yeah. It says if a guy had 7 brothers, and he goes through this big story, right? And so the first one married, and he died, and no kids. Second one, third one, and so this lady marries all 7 brothers. I think that if I was one of those brothers, I would have caught on after the second or third one didn't make it, right? So, and they say, well, in the resurrection, whose wife shall they be, or shall she be? And he goes, you guys are missing the point. He says, and when it comes to spiritual things, man is neither given in marriage, is not given in marriage, and so you're missing the whole idea about what heaven truly is. And then they come with another question, and they said, what's the greatest commandment? And he said, well, the first one is love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, mind, body, soul, strength. And the second is like unto the first, love thy brother as thyself. And there's a one writer that he records that one of the lawyers came back to him and he says, he has an interaction with Jesus and he says, you're just about there. You've got the idea that the law was not given to make man righteous, but to show men that, we need God. And so they quit asking questions after that point. I said, well, that ain't going to work. We're not going to trick him up with questions. And so now Jesus goes in and he he's still there, and he starts talking to the disciples, talking to the mass, and talking about how pride is such a shallow thing, you know, and he gives the examples of making long prayers, and you may remember the special little box that they wore on their head and on their arm, starts with a P, and it sounds like an F because it's PH, it's phylactery. He says you enlarge those just so people can see who you are. He says you've made it all about you. And then last week we studied where Jesus actually gave them several woes. He says, woe unto you. And so I'll just read those off real fast, and then that puts us back on where we're at. So the first one was, woe unto them because they were hindering the faith of other people. This is all, Matthew records this all for us. He's the only writer that does that. And he says, woe unto you because you use your positions to cheat other people out. He uses the example of the widow and you know, pretty much robbing them of everything that they had. Woe unto your way because you all commit great errors in your teaching. Woe unto you because you've placed the wrong emphasis on the wrong thing. Woe unto you because you'll even tithe of the herbs that you collect, but you've forgotten the weightier matters of the laws of mercy and justice. Woe unto you because you have this outward appearance of righteousness, but yet you are nothing but full of dead man's bones. And he uses a couple of descriptions in that because he uses their physical appearance, and then he describes them like whited sepulchres, you know, that you've whitewashed your tomb, but on the inside, you know, that's where the dead man bones comes into play. And he says, and finally he says, woe unto you because you've set yourself up as someone that would have celebrated the prophets and the men of old, but you are the sons of those that killed them, and you would have done the exact same thing. As a matter of fact, you're about to, you know. He didn't say that last part. I ad-libbed that a little bit. But he gave them those woes. And we step back and on the face value, it's like, wow, I mean, he's really hard on this group of people. Well, the truth is, he's giving them the truth. And so as we've studied that together, we've had to keep in mind that there's always a purpose behind it. And since he created us, he knows us as individuals, you know, and maybe the adage, birds of a feather flock together. So, I mean, the group of Pharisees kind of had a similar mindset, right? Group of publicans kind of had a similar mindset. Group of whatever group of people, there's a similar mindset. People just are kind of naturally attracted to similar beliefs. And so he talks to a group, but he's talking to them as individuals. But we really see the heart of the situation. They're in the last of Matthew chapter 23, if you want to look there, just a few verses. He says, O Jerusalem, Jerusalem, thou that killest the prophets and stonest them which were sent unto thee, how often would I have gathered thy children together, even as a hen gathereth her chickens under her wings, and ye would not. So what was his underlying message in telling them this truth? Was it to drive them away? No, it was to give them their only opportunity to come unto him. You know, before he used some descriptions and about the blind man, and they said, are we blind? He says, well, if you knew you were blind, then you would actually be seeing at this point in time, because you don't see your sins. And so you're blinded to that. And because you say you see, well, you're actually blind because you're looking at it the wrong way. So it's all for this one purpose, and it's to draw all men unto himself. And these men are included in that. And some of them did come. You know, if if we get through this and we're still here, you know, and we ever get to the book of Acts, right, which would be the next logical stop. If we're looking at this in chronological pattern, the book of Acts would be our next logical stop when we get through studying the Gospels. There are several people in Jerusalem, a lot of people that come to know the Lord, and many of them out of this Pharisaical, Sadducee, lawyer-based tradition. They were without exception. The Lord is drawing them to himself now. So that's where we're at. for the next thing that we can study tonight, and we're going to study this in two places, we've got to go to Mark and to Luke. And we're going to look at both of them, and they're so close as far as having the same record, but there is a little bit of difference that helps us just have a deeper understanding. So if you want to turn to the book of Mark, chapter 12. And then we'll end up in Luke, and we'll stay in Luke for just a few minutes, and we'll be done a little before our normal time tonight. I don't know if anybody's going to be mad for that. Mark, chapter number 12. So I'll pick it back up in verse number 38, and we would have read this 2 weeks ago when we were studying his challenge to their pride. And then last week we studied Matthew's record of the woes, but he's the only one that records that for us. Mark doesn't do it, Luke doesn't do it, for the Lord's specific reasons. But here's what he would have been saying before he pronounced the woes. And verse 38, and he said unto them his doctrine, beware of the scribes which love to go in long clothing, and love salutations in the marketplaces, and the chief seats in the synagogues, and the uppermost rooms at feasts, which devour widows' houses, and for a pretense make long prayers. These shall receive the greater damnation. So he's really talking about the pride of their life. And then he goes in and he says, woe unto you. It has very strong words. And, I don't know if we took time to just read through that in Matthew. There was probably, a minute or two of just strong criticism and saying, this is all the areas that you've really have gone the wrong way. We didn't read that, but just know that's there. And then we get to verse number 41. So he gets done giving that speech, that talk. And Jesus set over against the treasury, and beheld how the people cast money into the treasury, and many that were rich cast in much. All right, how much does it take to be rich? Millions. Oh, we got millions. Billions and trillions. Those are big numbers. 100,000 would be a big number. Mr. John? A zillion. That's getting up there now. A quadrillions. Wow, I can't even count that high. Well, the Bible doesn't say what it takes to be rich. But won't you all think about being rich for just a minute? So would you say a person that you're considering rich, did they ever have to wonder if they were going to eat dinner that day? Probably not. Did they ever worry about having a jacket when it got cold weather? Probably not. Did they wonder if they could go to the movies and get popcorn and a Coke? I think that takes, you got to be rich these days to do that, especially with more than two people. Okay. So the Bible doesn't say, because that's not the point. Okay. Jesus is making an observation, and he just says he doesn't say, but the Lord encourages this writer to make an observation or write down what Jesus was observing. And it doesn't say how much rich was, but it does say what their mindset was. And this is the important part. So Jesus sat over against the treasury and beheld how the people cast money into the treasury, and many that were rich cast in much. People put in lots of money. Verse 42, and there came a certain poor widow. All right, somebody describe to me what you see in your mind if you paint a picture of a poor widow. Old lady, okay. Scarf, bonnet on her head. Did it maybe have a hole in it or a tattered edge? Okay. Does she maybe have a walking stick? Okay, see a walking stick? Anybody else see anything? Glasses maybe? Okay. What about how she walks? Is she good and straight, or she kind of lean over a little bit? What do you think, Miss Anna? Earrings, maybe has an earring in or earrings in. Could be. Could we? Yeah, glasses was on the table. A mole on her nose. Okay, a watch. I don't know if they wore sundials on their wrists or not back then, but I don't know. She might have had a watch. Holes in her shoes. Do you think her clothes tattered? Maybe mismatched a little bit, you know, scrawny and bony. Okay, so we got a comparison here. You see, Jesus is just watching. Well, we may have went a step too far. Can anybody describe to me what the word treasury means? The offering plates. Yeah. So we don't really call this the treasury, but when even in those days, the Lord had shared with his people, like, it's a good thing to give to the Lord what he has given unto you. And so that principle is really old. That idea goes back all the way to the book of Genesis. This idea of saying, Lord, thank you for what you've done for me. I want to give some back out of thanks. And so he's watching this, not that anything of that is wrong, but he says he was watching and he noticed the rich people gave a lot. So, the Lord must really like that, right? I mean, people giving a lot of money to the church, giving a lot of money to the treasury, that must sound really good. And then you've got this, and you all have already described her, you painted a picture in your mind, this little old lady, kind of hunched over, walking stick, glasses, mole on her nose, tattered clothes, bonnet on her head. Clean or dirty? Probably dirty, yeah. Hadn't had an opportunity to get cleaned up. Holes in her shoes. It says, and there came a certain poor widow, which threw in 2 mites, which make a farthing. Okay. Let's explain what we just read. 2 nickels make a dime. Got it? So he was just telling us how much money she actually put in. He gave it to us in an exact amount. How much money did the rich people put in? Just a lot, a bunch. We don't know an exact amount, just as much. It says that this lady came by and she put 2 mites into the offering plate, which equal a farthing. You don't know what that means yet. I'm going to explain that in just a minute. But it doesn't sound like she put in very much. What do you think Jesus is going to say about this if you don't know the story? Just guesses. Now, if you know the story, don't say it out loud. Do what? You already know the story? All right, you already know the story. Anybody else with a guess that might not know how this story ends? Which one do you think he was had the best things to say about? The people that put the lot in there or the people that put the little bit in there? Well, why would it be a good thing for people to put a little bit in there? Rich people were trying to show off. Ooh, that's probably a pretty good idea there, Miss Anna. What's your thoughts?
Because it's from their heart.
You are so smart. Well, let's read on and let the Bible tell us what, okay? Verse 43, and he called unto his disciples. So his disciples were kind of still milling around. And he said, get over here. Let me tell you something. And he saith unto them, verily I say unto you, that this poor widow hath cast more in, she put more in the offering plate, than all of them which have cast into the treasury. And I'll go ahead and add the word today. It's implied, but so it started out with rich people who cast in a whole lot. And he said she put in more than they did. Now, I don't know about you, but if you answered a question like that on the TCAP test, you probably get it wrong with basic math. Oh, good. That's a good thing. Whew, that's a load off your mind right there. So Jesus said, some of them put in a whole bunch of money. This widow put in just 2 little mites, but she put in more than they did. And the answer is in the last verse, verse 44. For they did cast in out of their abundance, but she of her want did cast in all that she had, even all her living. Let's put this in non-money terms. The rich people put in because they had some left over. She put in because she said, well, this is all I got, but the Lord gets it all. Now, the lesson is not to give, if you have 2 mites, to say, Lord, I'm going to give 2 mites, and that's not what he's teaching us here. What he's teaching is exactly what you all said, is the fact that she gave out of her heart. They gave out of their showing off or wealth, because you all connected the dots. Remember, Jesus has been talking about people doing all these things for the wrong reasons. And so they gave this gift just so people could see how much they could give. It was all about, look at me, I have brought a bag of money. Look at me give the bag of money. My bag of money that I made by myself with all my work, because I am smart and I have lots of money. Did I tell you where the money came from? It was from me. I brought it. I've now given it to the Lord, a large sum of money. And the little lady, I don't even know if she probably tried to sneak in when nobody was looking, because it wasn't between her and anybody, it was between her and God, and she gave her 2 mites. Let's talk about the 2 mites for a second. So many times this idea of 2 mites, and it's not a bad way to think about it. Sometimes we think about them as a half a penny or a penny apiece. So if you brought in 2 pennies and put them in the offering plate, that doesn't seem like a whole lot. But what made the difference was it was all she had. There's a word we're going to read in Luke that's a little different word. I'm going to describe it. But here in Mark it says she gave out of her want. Now we got to think about that the right way. It means that she gave even when all of her needs were really not even met. To be in want of something isn't just like, I hope I get it. It's not like asking for a Christmas present, okay? To be in want means, well, I don't have enough to do this basic need I have in my life. I'm in want. I'm in need. I am lacking even the basic things. And so this lady didn't even have all of her basic needs met. And yet, out of her heart, she says, Lord, I'm going to give this to you. Now, the Lord is not saying that that is the model, like give everything away, none of your needs get met. But he says, you need to check why you're giving. That's the question. 2 mites, if you want to know a little bit deeper in that. So it is, and I forgot to write this word down, so I'm about to make a word up. All right, so nobody go and try to find this one. But it has this idea. Currency back then was, and it's still today. So for instance, if $1 is the base amount of currency, what percent of $1 is a quarter? A quarter, 25%, right? So how many quarters does it make to make $1? 4. Now, that works out really good with quarters. Pennies are no longer in existence. How many pennies did it take? 100. How many nickels does it take? How many dimes? All right, y'all got it. So in that day, one form of way of saying money was a way to say this is a day's wage. Okay? Now we don't calculate money quite like that these days. You can. Most of the time when we talk about earning money, if you're working for a job, sometimes we talk about like how many dollars you make an hour. All right, let's do some basic math. Who's got a calculator on them? I know somebody's got a calculator somewhere. Phone calculator, there's Clay's reaching for it. So Clay can be our math whiz today. Okay, somebody give me, well, it's really changed, so I'll go ahead and throw one out there because I get a lot of kids that kind of work in this capacity. If you're just starting work, you're going to a place like, well, who would, if you worked at McDonald's, you would eat some of your you would eat chicken nuggets all day long because you're working at McDonald's. Yeah, I see a smiling face right there. Or if you worked at Chick-fil-A, you might be like getting you a milkshake because you really like that. Oh, Brother Faust, I thought he raised his hand over there. But probably not a crazy number that today, which is crazy to me, but they pay about $15 an hour to work at some of those restaurants. And that's just the basic number. So if you were to work there and you made $15 an hour and you worked for 8 hours, how much would you earn for a day's wage? 15 times 8. Huh? Oh, no, I was going to let the calculator man do the work. I mean, 120 bucks. Yep. So I do 15s by I convert them into 30s and stack them up. So that's how I do it in my brain. So 120 bucks is what you'd make in a day. This lady, it says she gave everything she had, right? Did I miss that? Everybody catch that part? So she gave 2 mites, which is equivalent to, and there's the Greek word that I forgot to write down. So a day's wage is like not a denarius. Denarii, yeah. So it's just a day's wage. So we're going to put it in today's money. So if we were in today's money, we were going to say we were going to give 2 mites, which is a farthing. That's what we read in Mark. It says that 2 mites is equal to 1 farthing. A farthing is 1/64th of a day's wage. So this lady, all she had, and this would be in today's dollars, okay? So like she was living today, she had this much money she gave. 120 divided by 64. $1.87 is all she had. Now, more than 2 pennies, but we gotta keep it like current with the times. So I don't know, for many of y'all in here, you're like, well, $1.87 sounds pretty good to me, and that's good. But you can't hardly even buy, I don't know if you can buy a pack of bubble gum for $1.87, much less eat breakfast, lunch, or dinner. You wouldn't get all 3. I don't know if you'd even get one of them. A piece of bread, maybe. So she didn't have much to give, but she gave all that she had, and it was a matter of her heart. Let's go look at Luke's account, and then we'll be done. So Luke, you'll find it in chapter 21. So the words are almost identical, and rightfully so. It's the same story being told. Now, remember, Luke has a little different primary audience, but that means they'll probably connect with other words a little easier. So Luke 21, first 4 verses, and he looked up and saw the rich men casting their gifts into the treasury. And he also saw a certain poor widow casting in thither 2 mites. And he said, of a truth I say unto you, that this poor widow hath cast in more than they all. For all these have of their abundance cast in unto the offering of God. But she, and here's the different word, but she of her penury hath cast in all the living that she had. And that word penury means of great need. She had given even though she didn't have all she needed already. Poverty would be a great way to, another idea word that you can exchange for penury. So they're out of their abundance, so I've got enough extra, I'll go ahead and give a little so people can see. I mean, that's what we take away from it. The Lord didn't make that exact comment, but if we back up to all the comments he's been making for the past chapter, it's all been about your pride, it's all been about you, getting things in the wrong order. And so he makes a comment on they've given out of their abundance, so we can probably make a pretty good association there that it was because they wanted to be seen giving a lot of money. Is there anything wrong with giving a lot of money? No. It was their reason. So here's the takeaways that we can learn from tonight. God is always judging of the intents of the heart of a person. somebody that gives gleefully, willfully, because they want to honor God and they give a great sum of money, there's nothing wrong with that. Somebody that has nothing to give and they say, Lord, I don't really have much, but what I have is yours, and they give even though they're in poverty and they only give a little bitty amount, $1.87, 2 widows' mites. The Lord doesn't look at that and say, that's not enough. Because he actually commended her. So the end of that verse, for all these have given abundance, cast in their offering, but she of her penury hath cast in all the living that she had. From here, Jesus walks out of the temple. Okay, and we're not going to study this tonight, but I'll give you a little prelude to next week. And so they walk out of like the temple building, which is where the treasury would have been, along the edge of it, side of it, front door, wherever it was. And they walk out to like the grounds of the temple. And so now they're outside and they look at and they're going to be looking at the buildings, because there was more than one. I mean, there was one temple, but there was like several buildings around it. And they're going to start looking and saying, wow, look at this place, Lord. This is going to be a great place for you to be the ruler, the king. They're still having that idea. And his words are going to be like, well, it's pretty nice. Too bad it won't be here much longer. There won't even be one rock stacked upon another rock. And they're like, you don't know what you're talking about. And he does. So that's what we get to study next week as we move on forward. Anybody want to make a comment or add tonight? I know it's a little shorter tonight. We did some reviewing, but you girls are exactly right. It's because they gave out of love of their heart. And so the dollar number figure wasn't the important part. It was their reasoning that was the important part. Yeah. Gave it all. Yeah. 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 Another good example there. Well, let's pray. Lord, we come to you. We do thank you for this evening. We can study together. And Lord, how you encourage us to Lord, for you to search our hearts, like David would say. And Lord, make sure that we're doing things for the right reasons. And if not, Lord, help us in that area. Lord, give us guidance. Lord, make our ways sure as we know that you will. Lord, we thank you for this evening. We ask you to keep us safe. Lord, be with us as we go to Paulette here in a few days to serve there. Lord, that you would bless in that capacity. And in the week to come as we have our Bible release time, and then our Mother's Day work day, and then our Mother's Day service coming up, Lord, that you would bless in all those capacities. We thank you for this in Jesus' name. Amen.